Hey everyone, I'm Foster with Pioneer in Canada, and I'm going to give you a complete overview of the RMX-1000. So we will go to the overhead view so you can see everything when I'm using the RMX, and then we'll come back to this view so I can go over the inputs and outputs and the rear of the RMX-1000. So check it out. Here is the overhead view of the RMX-1000, and I already have it set up on the send and return with the DJM900 Nexus. And to make sure you can use the send and return with the Nexus and the RMX, you got to have your beat effects set to send and return. I have my channel selection set to master. You can have it set to any other input source you want to use. I just have it to master so it affects everything that's going through right now. Your level and depth, I have that set to 12 o'clock, and I'm going to engage that effect to make sure we're sending a signal up to the RMX. So we'll come back here, I'll turn on the RMX. I have a track selected on the CDJ2000 on channel 2, and it will be sent to the RMX via send and return. Starting up here in the top corner, you have your input level volume, and then across from that you have your output level volume. So that's fairly explanatory. The input level volume is whatever volume is coming into the RMX, and your output is whatever is being output from the RMX, hopefully going back on the send and return to your mixer. So normally what I find, keeping your level at 12 o'clock on your input level gives you approximately the same volume from your mixer. So if you have your mixer set to 0 dB on the output master, it'll input that to approximately 0 dB on your RMX-1000. And your output level, I usually find just past 12 o'clock is the best spot to give you the same output level as being input, which is what you want, because you don't want to be able to tell when your RMX is engaged or not. So I'll play a track right now, and if we have our levels set correctly, I'll be able to turn the RMX send and return on and off, and we won't be able to tell that there's a difference in any volumes because the levels are set properly. So there is pretty much no difference in volume there, and my input and output levels are pretty much the same, so that you don't tell when the RMX is engaged or not, which is good. That's a good thing that you want that. So yeah, just past 12 o'clock for your output level and right around 12 o'clock for your input level. Pretty much the same there. So moving across here, we have our quantize effect, and what the quantize does is it actually quantizes your X-pad and your parameters with the tempo that is selected on the screen there. You can use your auto BPM detect, or you can use a tap function to tap in your own BPM. Some like to use the tap because they find it as a faster feature, or some like to use the auto just to not worry about tapping in their own BPM. So we'll just leave it on auto for now. Going below the quantize, you have nudge, and what the nudge does is switches the beat grid of your X-pad that you have playing. So if you create like a loop or a beat with your X-pad, and then you play a track, you'll be able to nudge the X-pad up or down to get closer in time with your input source that's being played. So going down here, you have your effects source, and what that does is it allows you to select which effects, or which source you'd like to affect, sorry. So we have our input source that we can affect with everything on our RMX, or we can turn that on or off, or we can turn our X-pad on or off for affecting that with our entire RMX unit. So when it's not lit up, that means it's not being affected, and when it is lit up, of course, that means that you're able to affect that source with the RMX. So going across, here is your first set of effects, and you have a low frequency, a mid frequency, and a high frequency parameter, and those three knobs work with the isolator, cut and add, trans and roll, and gate and drive. So those four effects work with these three knobs to control either your input source or your X-pad. And sorry, not to control it, to affect it, I should say. So we'll just play a track here, and I'll kind of go through all four of those effects with each parameter, and I'll show you just kind of what they do exactly. So here is your isolator. Cut your lows, cut your mids, or cut your highs. It's a complete isolation. So you can completely kill the frequency and completely kill the sound. Alright, so we'll go over to our cut and add, and what the cut does is it kind of acts as an isolator, but it has less harsh parameters, so it's more like an EQ kind of. It's a little warmer than the Isolator. So you can kind of tell it kills a little more with the Isolator than it does with the cut and the add. The cut and the add lets a little more through. So staying on the cut and the add, we'll go to the add side, which is the past 12 o'clock to the right, clockwise. So it kind of adds like a tail to it. It adds like a roll to the frequency and kind of like a tail. So go to the low. Alright, and then we'll go over to our trans and our roll, and the trans chops it up. And then your roll just adds a roll, and with different depths gives it different lengths of roll. Alright, so we'll cue that track up and play it again just so we're back there. So yeah, you get your roll. And then we'll go to our gate and our drive. Sorry. It gets really punchy. Just overdrives the frequency. Alright, so there are those four effects, and that can be affected, or the two sources that can be affected with that are the input source and the X-Pad, and you can do that with all four of those effects across there. Alright, so moving down, we go to the X-Pad, and down here is your level select for your X-Pad. Normally, right over there around 9 o'clock is actually probably the best spot for your volume level. Depending on how loud your input source is, you'll have to play around with it. And then here is your pitch, so you can actually change the pitch of the X-Pad, whatever samples you're using on the X-Pad. And the bank is actually allows you to have up to 4 banks of samples, and you can export them to an SD card through your computer with using Remixbox. Which is a free software you can download for your RMX-1000, and it also comes with it. Alright, so the roll feature is actually like a sampler which samples the input source, and you can use it with the X-Pad. So we'll play a track here, and I'll do a bit of a sample, and I'll hold it, and I'll turn off the track so you can hear the sample. So there, it has the sample going through, and then you can actually play around with it. So you can do that with live samples on the fly, and those parameters that are set in right now, you can actually change those within Remixbox. So I would definitely recommend downloading that and checking it out, and you can put in your own parameters for each of those 5 kind of pads on the X-Pad there. Alright, so aside from using those pads, you also have built-in samples. And you have 5 built-in samples. You have a kick, snare, clap, and hi-hat. So I said that you can put in your own samples, and since you have 4 banks of that, you can use the banks of your own samples, or you can use those 4 samples at the same time as well. So you're not replacing those samples as well, and you'll always have those available. And you can also double up with selecting your snare and using your X-Pad to change the time parameter of your snare, and it will actually quantize it to the beats that's your BPM that's playing. So you can do that with all 4 of your samples there, so you can select it. So that's really cool. You can just play around with your samples and stuff like that and use different time parameters with the auto BPM that has been selected for you. Or whatever you have your input source as, it'll select that BPM. And then what the Overdub does is it actually allows you to create your own beats using your built-in samples or using samples that you've added. So right now I'm just going to kind of create a bit of a beat, see how well we can do it here. So there we go. Just created a little beat there. We got our kick, our snare, our clap, and our hi-hat going. And since I have the overdub on, that is going to continuously play. And that sample is just going to keep repeating itself. And I can actually turn that off by pressing the overdub, or I can affect the time parameters with using my XPad. So since I have those effects parameters, I can change the time, and I can create a bunch of different mashups and stuff. Alright, so now that we have that playing, let's just play our track and we'll get, or actually, sorry, I'll show you the XPad here. You can actually affect it with your parameters up here. So we have a beat going. You can actually affect it with all of your effects up here. So, or actually you can just build that up and cut it right back into the drop. So yeah, it's really cool. Just play with your own samples or play with the pre-programmed samples that are already in it, and you can just mess around with your effects there. So now that I showed you that these 4 effects can be used over top of your XPad, I'm going to let you know that your scene effects can be used over top of your XPad as well, but we're not quite to the scene effects, so we'll worry about that later. Right now I'm going to play an input track, and I'm actually going to make sure that it's out of time with our XPad at the moment, so we can use the nudge feature to change the grid of our XPad to become in time with our input source. So here we're going to purposely make sure this is out of time. There we go. So the tracks are purposely out of time, and now we're going to use the nudge feature to change the grid of the XPad. I think it's getting worse. There we go. There we go. Yeah, there, it sounds good to me. Alright, so yeah, we just use the nudge feature to change the grid of our XPad so that it's in time with our input source. So the beats are actually in sync now. And yeah, now that we have those in sync, we don't have anything to worry about. We can actually mess around with our input source now. Or we can mess around with our XPad if we want. Or both. Alright, so after messing around with that a little bit, we'll go back to just the XPad. So, yeah, so to still kill our XPad, you can just hit the overdub button and it'll shut off your XPad. But now I'm going to show you our scene effects over top of the XPad, just to give you a bit of an example of them. We can do it over top of the input source as well, but I'll just do these ones really quick. So here is a Bandpass Filter Echo. With your scene effects, you have 5 build-up effects and 5 breakdown effects. And here is your first one, which is the Bandpass Filter Echo. And on top of those, you also have two sub-parameters. And one is normally a time parameter or length, and then your sub-parameter sometimes does various types of things depending on which effect you have engaged. So I'd recommend checking out the manual for more information on those. So first, just to go through them. Echo, and then, sorry, you can change your time. Noise. It's very powerful. And your spiral up. Reverb up. Very big room sound. Alright, and we'll go down to our breakdown effects. Here is your high pass filter echo. So you get a high pass filter and an echo on top. If you just want a high pass filter, you can actually turn this subparameter 1 all the way down, and it's just a high pass filter, no echo. So if you want echo, you got to engage that a bit. And we'll go to our low pass filter echo. So if you just want a low pass filter, you can turn that parameter all the way down. You get a very powerful low filter. And you want that echo on there as well. Give it some punch. And then we'll go to our crush echo. And we'll spiral down. It's a very good breakdown effect, not good when we're just using this. Reverb down. Very powerful reverb. Alright, so those are your scene effects, and you can use those on top of your XPad as well as your input source. So now that we're done listening to this boring beat that I created, we'll cancel that with your overdub there, or you can also use your release effects over here. We'll get to that in a second though. I'll just go over the input source a little bit with a couple of these. Let's get a bit more of a feel for them. Alright, so yeah, I just used the spiral down effect one more time at the end there just to do it for that breakdown, just because I wanted to show you that it does work very well for a breakdown. It had that really nice tail and trailed out at the end there right into the track. So yeah, it's a really good effect. You just have to use them in the right purpose, really. Alright, so that is a good example of all of our scene effects there. And finally, we move on to our release effects. So we have 3 release effects. You got your vinyl break, your echo, and your backspin. So here, I'll just do it right here on this drop. And that is just one of my favorite effects about this. So that was just our vinyl break there. And what it does is it actually kills the entire RMX, all the audio coming through it, and as soon as you release it, it brings the audio back. So right at a drop, here's your echo, and your backspin. It's very powerful on the backspin though. So then here we can actually change it because it goes with the amount of your finger here. So it depends on how quickly you bring the control down for how fast it actually engages the effect. So we'll bring it back up and we'll do it on the vinyl and the echo as well, just to show you that you can change the time kind of. So that is super slow, or you can just kind of go a little faster, or you can just go quick. Echo. And one last thing about the release effect is actually when you drop it, it actually cancels everything that you already have set out on the RMX. So if you have a scene effect engaged, if you have samples playing, and if you have your isolator effect going or any of these 4 effects engaged, it will, as soon as you drop that release effect, it will cancel all of those effects and the input, but when you release it again, it will only play the source input. So we'll get something going here. And we'll just get a couple of random samples going. We'll get a bit of effects going here just to mess it all up. So as soon as I release this after it's done, as soon as I release the scene effect, it'll cancel everything, and when I let go again, it'll just be the input source back to the regular music. So it just goes back to normal as nothing was ever done to it. So that's one great thing to know about the release effect over there. And one last thing about the samples. When you have an input source going and you have it selected on roll and you create a sample, I normally find that having your X-Pad level set to 12 o'clock is best for your samples. There, so you can tell that there's no difference in volume with when the X-Pad level is set to 12 o'clock. If you have that any less or more, it'll probably change the volume quite a bit. So yeah, your 12 o'clock notch is when you create a quick sample there, and then you can just mess around with it there. So that is pretty much everything. I can't think of anything else at the moment. We will, well, I guess your user settings or your default settings, that's just if you have different parameters on your X-Pad or different parameters for your levels on your effects and stuff like that. You can save them to an SD card and then export them to it, and then change your settings to user, and it'll actually load those settings on the RMX so that it's like a personalized RMX, and you can use those wherever you are. And you can switch it back to default just to use the default settings which are already there. So that's how you get different parameters here on the X-Pad for your time parameters and stuff like that for samples. Alright, so we will switch back to the overview, or to the other view, and I will go over the inputs and outputs of the back of this, and I'll just talk a little bit about the controls and parameters and stuff like that. Alright, so to go over the back of the RMX-1000, we'll just turn it around there for you. First over here you have this latch, and that's used for the power cable. You can wrap it around there, so if the power cable gets pulled or anything like that, it won't pull on the actual plug that it's connected to or pull it out of the RMX, so you can just latch it around there. Next you have the power connection right beside there. Going over you have a switch which turns it on and off, or on from standby to on, I guess. And then continuing across you have your USB connection, so you can connect it to your computer, and then if you have an SD card in the RMX, it actually shows up on your computer, so you can access it and use it with Remixbox. You can put your samples on the SD card just by using the USB on this. And you can also save your settings with Remixbox and export them to the card and save them on the card and everything like that just through this and through using the RMX unit. And then also, one of the best things about it is you can actually use this with a software plugin. The RMX-1000 has a plugin, and it's provided with the unit, and you can also download it online, and you can use it with your DAW. So you can use it for producing. And it's awesome to use this as a hardware production unit and use it with the plugin that it came with. I would definitely recommend checking that out for you producers or anything like that if you want to take a look at it. Going across, you also have another little switch, and that switches it from a send and return unit to a master unit. So if you have a DJM-2000 or a DJM-900 Nexus with a send and return, you leave it on the send and return settings. But if you don't have a send and return on your mixer and you have the RMX, you switch it to the other setting, which sets it as a master unit, which means your master from your mixer comes into the RMX-1000, and then it goes from the RMX-1000 to your speakers. So your RMX-1000 is now your master output. So that just adds extra volume to it for being a master output. Then continuing across, we have our Trs cables. I believe those are the returns back to your mixer or to your master output if you're doing that. And you also have them in RCA. So you have RCA and 1/4 inch sends and returns, and they both work together. So you can use the 1/4 inch ins, and you can use the RCA outs if you want, or you can use the RCA ins and you can use the 1/4 inch outs to your speakers. Yeah, so that is pretty much everything on the back of the RMX-1000. I hope I covered everything in this video. There's a lot to go over with it. If you guys have any questions on this unit or about this or any other Pioneer DJ products, please leave me a comment down below in the description. I'll try and get back to you guys as soon as possible. Other than that, I'm Foster with Pioneer DJ in Canada, and thank you guys for checking out this video. See ya.